My sister laughed when she saw my old car. You drive that old piece of junk? But 15 minutes later, she crashed her $55 $1 car backing up without looking in the restaurant parking lot. The mechanic said the repair would cost $8,000 and her insurance wouldn't cover it due to negligence, so she came to me crying to borrow money. I showed her my savings account statement with $127,700 saved precisely from driving my old piece of junk for 10 years instead of spending on ridiculous car payments. The entire incident happened at Marco's Italian Bistro, where we'd agreed to meet for our monthly lunch. I'd pulled into the parking lot in my 2014 Honda Civic. The paint slightly faded, but the engine purring like the day I bought it. Vanessa was already there, leaning against her gleaming black BMW X5, scrolling through her phone with her designer sunglasses perched on her head. The moment she looked up and saw me park, her face twisted into that familiar expression of disdain I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. She didn't even wait for me to get out before starting. "Oh my God, Diana, you're still driving that old piece of junk? Seriously?" Her voice carried across the parking lot, loud enough that a couple walking past turned to look. "I keep telling you, image matters. What must your patients think when they see you pull up in that thing?" I locked my car, the satisfying beep of my paid-off vehicle echoing in my ears. "My patients care about clean teeth, not what I drive." I walked toward her, noticing how she positioned herself to block the view of my car, as if its presence somehow diminished her. "Well, some of us care about more than just the bare minimum." She gestured to her BMW with the pride of someone showing off a newborn. "I just detailed her last week. Cost me $300, but you can practically see your reflection in the paint." I could have mentioned that $300 was more than my last 3 oil changes combined, but I'd learned years ago that engaging with Vanessa's materialism only fed it. Instead, I smiled and said, "It looks great. Should we head inside?" But Vanessa wasn't done. "You know, Diana, you're almost 30. Don't you think it's time to invest in yourself a little? I mean, you've been working at that dental office for what, 7 years now? You must have saved something by living in that tiny apartment and never going anywhere." The tiny apartment she referenced was a modest 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood where I paid $900 a month. Vanessa's luxury downtown loft cost her $2,400. But she'd never once mentioned struggling with rent. Image was everything to my sister. Even if that image was built on a foundation of debt I suspected was far deeper than she let on. "I do just fine," I said simply, holding the restaurant door open for her. Inside Marco's, we ordered our usual. Vanessa got the most expensive pasta on the menu and a glass of wine that cost $18. I ordered the lunch special. Throughout the meal, she continued her commentary on my life choices. How I needed to update my wardrobe, how I should be networking more, how my lack of ambition was embarrassing for the family. I let her talk. I always did. There was no point in arguing with Vanessa when she was on one of her rants. Our parents had always favored her, the successful marketing manager with the impressive job title and the expensive tastes. I was just the dental hygienist who lived quietly and never made waves. When the check came, Vanessa grabbed it immediately. "I've got this. Consider it a charity contribution to your pathetic budget." She laughed at her own joke, pulling out a credit card that gleamed with metallic sheen. I wondered which of her 6 cards this one was, and whether it was already maxed out like I suspected the others were. We walked out together into the bright afternoon sun. Vanessa was still talking about some marketing campaign she was leading, how her boss was considering her for a promotion, how she was thinking about upgrading to the newer BMW model next year. I made appropriate sounds of interest while calculating in my head exactly how much debt she must be carrying. "Well, this was fun," Vanessa said, fishing her keys from her purse. "We should do this more often. Maybe next time you could let me drive and we could actually arrive somewhere in style." She winked, as if this was playful teasing instead of the condescension it actually was. I watched her walk toward her BMW, her heels clicking against the asphalt. She was texting as she walked, not paying attention to anything around her. She clicked the unlock button, opened the driver's door, and tossed her purse inside. Still staring at her phone, she slid behind the wheel. I was unlocking my own car when I heard it, the sharp metallic crunch of expensive German engineering meeting an immovable object. I looked up to see Vanessa's BMW jerking to a stop, her rear bumper crushed against a concrete parking barrier that she'd backed directly into without ever looking up from her phone. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Vanessa's scream shattered the quiet afternoon. "No, no, no, no!" She threw her door open and scrambled out, nearly tripping over her heels. I walked over calmly. The damage was spectacular. The entire rear bumper was crumpled inward. One taillight completely shattered, the other hanging by wires. The backup sensors that were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of accident were now embedded in the bumper's twisted metal. Fluid was dripping onto the pavement, forming a small puddle beneath the car. "Oh my God, Diana, look what happened!" Vanessa's voice had lost all its earlier condescension, replaced by rising panic. I was just backing up and it came out of nowhere." "The concrete barrier came out of nowhere?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "You know what I mean." She crouched down, as if getting closer to the damage would somehow make it better. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. "I need to call my insurance." This is covered, right? It has to be covered. I waited while she made the call, pacing back and forth in front of her ruined BMW. I could hear only her side of the conversation, but her face told me everything I needed to know. The color drained from her cheeks. Her voice got higher, more desperate. She kept saying but, and surely, and there must be something. When she finally hung up, she looked like she might vomit. They're saying it's not covered. Driver negligence. Because I was on my phone and there are cameras in the parking lot that caught the whole thing. They're calling it distracted driving. How much is the repair? I asked. Vanessa pulled up something on her phone, her hands still trembling. I found a body shop nearby. They can look at it now. Will you drive me? I can't. I can't drive it like this. The body shop was 2 miles away. We didn't speak during the drive in my old piece of junk. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, staring out the window with tears running down her carefully made-up face. The mechanic was a gruff older man named Dale, who'd clearly seen 1,000 accidents just like this one. He walked around the BMW slowly, taking photos, making notes on a clipboard. Vanessa followed him like a lost puppy, asking questions he mostly ignored. Finally, he handed her his assessment. $8,000, give or take. The bumper needs complete replacement, new sensors, taillight assembly, probably some frame straightening underneath. Plus, you've got a fluid leak that needs addressing. Could be more once we get in there, but $8,000 is your minimum. Vanessa's face went white. $8,000? The number seemed to break something in her. I can't. We stood in the parking lot of the body shop, the afternoon sun beating down on us. Vanessa was crying openly now, mascara running down her face. Diana, I need help. I need to borrow the money. Just until I get my bonus next quarter, please. This was the moment I'd been waiting for without even knowing it. Years of condescension, of judgment, of being made to feel small because I didn't care about the same material things she did. All of it had led to this parking lot, this moment, with my sister crying and begging me for money. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I turned the screen toward her, showing her my savings account balance, $127, $482, 56. Vanessa's tears stopped. She blinked, leaning closer to make sure she was reading the number correctly. That's how do you have? Where did this come from? From driving that old piece of junk for 10 years, I said, my voice perfectly calm. From living in a tiny apartment, from never buying $300 car detailing or $18 glasses of wine, from making choices you've spent years mocking me for. Her mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. You want to know what your BMW payment is costing you? I continued. $850 a month. Based on what you told me when you bought it. That's $10,200 a year going to something that loses value every single day. I've been putting that same amount into savings for 7 years. Diana, and your apartment? You pay $1,400 more than me every month. That's another $16,800 a year. Gone. Just gone. So you can have a view and a doorman you never talk to. Vanessa was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. So yes, I have $127,000, I said. And no, you can't borrow any of it. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's mouth hung open, her mascara-streaked face frozen in shock. Around us, the body shop continued its normal operations, the sound of air tools and metal grinding filling the space between us. You can't be serious, Vanessa finally whispered. I'm your sister. You're my sister who just spent the last hour telling me how pathetic my life is, I replied. How my car is embarrassing. How my apartment is tiny. How I have no ambition. I didn't mean, yes, you did. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. You've meant it every single time you've said something like that for the past 10 years. Every family dinner where you talked about your vacations while I stayed home. Every Christmas where you showed off your designer gifts while making jokes about my Target clothes. You meant all of it. Vanessa's tears started flowing again, but this time they looked different, less shocked, more desperate. Diana, please, I'm begging you. I don't have $8,000. I don't even have $800 right now. That admission hung in the air between us. The successful marketing manager, the sister with the luxury apartment and the BMW and the designer everything, didn't have $800. What about your credit cards? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Her face told me everything. I'm close to the limits on most of them. Most of them. How many do you have? 6, she whispered. But I'm managing them. I make all my minimum payments. Minimum payments. I did the math in my head instantly. 6 maxed out credit cards. Minimum payments only. The interest alone was probably costing her thousands a year. Add in her car payment, her rent, her lifestyle. Vanessa wasn't just broke, she was drowning. What about your savings? I asked, though I already knew this answer too. She looked away. I have about $1,200 in checking. That's supposed to last me until next Friday's paycheck. And your bonus, the one you mentioned, that's not until December, if I get it. If I hit my targets. Her voice got smaller with each word. I looked at the BMW, sitting wounded in the body shop parking lot. $8,000 to fix a car she couldn't afford in the first place. A car she'd bought to impress people who didn't care. To maintain an image that was bankrupting her. You're going to need to figure something out, I said. Maybe a personal loan. Or you could put it on one of those credit cards if they're not quite maxed out yet. The interest rates are already killing me, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. If I add another $8,000 in debt, I'll never get out from under it. Then maybe you shouldn't have crashed into a concrete barrier while texting. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. Vanessa flinched like I'd slapped her. I can't believe you're being this cruel, she said. After everything our family has been through together. Our family? I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my own ears. When's the last time you included me in anything family-related without making me feel like the poor relation? Mom's birthday last month, you didn't invite me to the dinner because you said the restaurant was too expensive for my budget. Your engagement party 3 years ago, you told me the dress code was black tie optional, then made sure everyone knew I'd bought my dress on sale. That's not your wedding, I continued, the words flowing now. You didn't ask me to be your maid of honor. You said it was because Jennifer had been your college roommate, but then you told Mom it was because you didn't want me in the wedding photos looking frumpy next to your other bridesmaids. Vanessa's face went pale. Mom told you that? Mom tells me a lot of things, like how you told her I was wasting my life in a dead-end job, how you said I'd never amount to anything because I didn't have any drive, how you were embarrassed to tell your work friends what your little sister did for a living. Diana, I'm a dental hygienist, I said firmly. I help people maintain their oral health. I make a decent living. I pay my bills. I save my money. There's nothing embarrassing about any of that except to you. A mechanic walked past us, giving us a curious look. We were clearly having a family drama in the middle of his workplace. Vanessa seemed to realize this too, trying to compose herself. Can we at least talk about this somewhere private? She asked. There's nothing to talk about. You need $8,000. I'm not giving it to you. That's the end of the conversation. Lending, Vanessa corrected quickly. I'm asking to borrow it. I'll pay you back with interest. I'll sign something. Whatever you want. With what money? You just told me you're maxed out on 6 credit cards and living paycheck to paycheck. Where exactly would these loan payments come from? She didn't have an answer for that. I need to get back to work, I said, checking my watch. My afternoon shift started in an hour. You should probably call someone else. Maybe Mom and Dad. They're retired, Vanessa said desperately. They're living on fixed income. They don't have this kind of money. Then maybe call your husband. Doesn't Kyle make good money at his firm? Vanessa's face did something complicated. Kyle doesn't know how bad things are. I've been handling the finances. He thinks we're fine. This revelation was somehow worse than everything else. You've been lying to your husband about money? Not lying. Just not telling him everything. He travels so much for work. He doesn't pay attention to the bills. I didn't want him to worry. I stared at my sister, really looked at her. The designer purse that cost more than my monthly rent, the shoes that were probably a car payment, the lifestyle built on credit cards and lies, and the desperate need to appear successful while drowning in debt. You need to tell Kyle, I said. You need to tell him about all of it. The credit cards, the debt, this accident, all of it. I can't, Vanessa whispered. He'll be so disappointed in me. He'll be more disappointed when your creditors start calling the house, or when they repossess the BMW, or when you can't make rent because you're juggling too many minimum payments. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I've made such a mess of everything. For a brief moment, I felt something like pity, but then I remembered the parking lot 30 minutes ago, her voice dripping with contempt as she mocked my car, my life, my choices. The pity evaporated. Yes, you have, I agreed, and now you get to figure out how to fix it. Without my money. I turned and walked toward my car. Behind me, I heard Vanessa call my name, her voice cracking with desperation. I didn't turn around. I unlocked my 2014 Honda Civic, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. It purred to life perfectly, just like it always did. In my rearview mirror, I could see Vanessa standing alone in the body shop parking lot, her expensive life crumbling around her. I felt something then, but it wasn't guilt. It was satisfaction. As I drove away, my phone started buzzing. Text after text from Vanessa. I didn't read them. I had a shift to get to. Patients who depended on me. A life that was built on solid ground instead of quicksand. My old piece of junk carried me back to work without complaint. The air conditioning working perfectly, the radio playing softly. I thought about my savings account, about the financial security I'd built through choices Vanessa had spent years mocking. And I smiled. The texts from Vanessa continued for 3 days. At first, they were desperate pleas for help. Then they turned angry, accusing me of being selfish and cruel. By the 3rd day, they became informational updates I never asked for, describing how she was handling everything without my help. I deleted them all without responding. On the 4th day, my mother called. I was in the middle of a scaling procedure, so I let it go to voicemail. During my lunch break, I listened to the message. Diana, honey, please call me back. Your sister told me what happened with her car. I understand you two had some kind of disagreement about money. I'm not taking sides, but she's family. We need to talk about this. Call me. I didn't call back immediately. Instead, I finished my lunch and returned to my patients. It wasn't until that evening, sitting in my tiny apartment with a homemade dinner and a glass of affordable wine, that I dialed my mother's number. Diana, thank God, Mom answered on the first ring. I've been so worried. About what? About you and Vanessa. She's devastated about this whole situation. The car, the money, and now she says you won't even speak to her. She's right. I won't. There was a long pause. Diana, I know your sister can be difficult sometimes, but she's in real trouble here. That car needs to be fixed, and she doesn't have the money. That's not my problem. She's your sister, Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar guilt-inducing tone. Family helps family. Does family spend years making you feel worthless? I asked. Does family mock your life choices at every opportunity? Does family tell you you're embarrassing? Another pause. She told me what she said in the parking lot. She feels terrible about it. Does she feel terrible about it, or does she feel terrible that I won't give her money? Mom sighed. Maybe both. But Diana, holding a grudge isn't going to help anyone. Your father and I raised you better than this. You raised me to be financially responsible, I countered. You raised me to save money, to live within my means, to plan for the future. I'm doing exactly what you taught me. We also raised you to be compassionate. And where was Vanessa's compassion when she was calling my car a piece of junk? When she was mocking my apartment? When she told you I'd never amount to anything? The silence that followed told me Mom didn't have a good answer for that. I have to go, I said. I have plans tonight. It was a lie. My plans consisted of reading a book and going to bed early. But I needed to end this conversation before Mom's guilt trip started working. Over the next week, I learned through various family channels exactly what Vanessa was doing to solve her $8,000 problem. My aunt called to tell me Vanessa had applied for a personal loan and been denied. My cousin texted to say Vanessa had started a GoFundMe for unexpected car repairs that had raised exactly $73 before she took it down in embarrassment. And then Kyle called. Diana, it's Kyle, my brother-in-law said, his voice tight. We need to talk. About my wife's 6 maxed out credit cards that I just found out about the $28,000 in debt she's been hiding from me, about the fact that we're apparently living paycheck to paycheck and I had no idea. I closed my eyes. She told you. She didn't have a choice. The BMW is still sitting at the body shop because we can't afford to fix it. I finally asked why she wasn't just using insurance or savings, and the whole thing came out. He sounded exhausted. Did you know about this? I suspected, but I didn't know the specifics until the day she crashed. And you won't lend her the money. No. Can I ask why? Vanessa says you have over $100,000 in savings. I do, and she spent years making me feel stupid for having it. I kept my voice steady. Every choice I made to build that savings, she mocked. My car, my apartment, my clothes, my lifestyle. All of it was embarrassing to her. And now that she needs help, suddenly I'm supposed to forget all of that? Kyle was quiet for a moment. She's been cruel to you. Yes, I didn't know. Or maybe I didn't want to know. I travel so much for work, and when I'm home, Vanessa always seemed so confident, so successful. I thought we were doing great. You probably were doing great, I said, on credit. $28,000 on credit. He repeated, like he still couldn't believe it. Plus the car payment, the rent. Diana, we're underwater. I make decent money, but not enough to dig us out of this hole fast. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. We're looking at our options. Selling the BMW even with the damage, just to get rid of the payment. Moving to a cheaper apartment. Budget counseling. Maybe debt consolidation. He paused. Vanessa is devastated. Not just about the money, but about lying to me. She's been crying for days. I felt a small twinge of something that might have been sympathy, but I pushed it down. I'm sorry you're going through this, Kyle. But it's not my responsibility to fix it. I know, he said quietly. And honestly, I don't think you should. Vanessa needs to face the consequences of her choices. We both do. I should have paid more attention. She should have been honest. Bailing her out won't teach either of us anything. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking. Part of me wondered if I was being too harsh. But then I remembered the parking lot, Vanessa's contemptuous laugh, her conviction that my life was something to be pitied. No, I wasn't being too harsh. I was protecting the life I'd built. 2 weeks after the crash, Vanessa sold the BMW to a salvage buyer for $11,000. After paying off the remaining loan balance, she walked away with about $1,500. The money lasted less than a month. I know this because my mother called again, this time with a different request. Your sister and Kyle are moving, Mom said. They found a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,400 a month. Much more reasonable than that expensive place downtown. Good for them, I said neutrally. They need help with the moving costs. The deposit, first month's rent, hiring movers. It's going to be expensive. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Diana, Mom's voice took on that edge. Your father and I are contributing $1,000. We'd like you to match it. No, just like that, just like that. You have over $100,000 in the bank and you won't help your sister with $1,000? That's correct. Mom's frustration finally boiled over. I don't understand you, Diana. When did you become so cold? So selfish. Your sister made a mistake. People make mistakes. That doesn't mean you abandon them. She didn't make a mistake, Mom. She made 1,000 choices over years. Every credit card charge, every car payment, every rent payment on an apartment she couldn't afford. Those were all choices. And every time I made different choices, She mocked me for them. She's sorry about that, is she? Or is she sorry she needs money I won't give her? Mom didn't answer that. I need to go, I said. Give Dad my love. A month later, I saw the Facebook post. Vanessa had shared photos of their new apartment, framing it as a deliberate lifestyle change. Downsizing to live more intentionally, the caption read, learning that happiness doesn't come from material things. The comments were full of supportive messages from friends who had no idea this intentional downsizing was actually financial collapse. I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I just observed from a distance, watching my sister try to salvage her image even as her perfect life crumbled. But it was the next post, 3 days later, that made me smile. Vanessa had shared a listing for a duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood, talking about how she and Kyle were dreaming about their future investment property. The post was wistful, almost sad, mentioning how they'd have to save for a few years before they could afford a down payment. I looked at the listing. The duplex was in an area I'd been watching for months. The price was reasonable, the numbers made sense. Live in one unit, rent out the other, build equity while someone else paid most of your mortgage. I called my mortgage broker the next morning. The mortgage process moved faster than I expected. I'd already been pre-approved for far more than the duplex cost. My debt-to-income ratio was nearly 0, and my substantial down payment made me an ideal borrower. Within 3 weeks, I was signing closing documents. The duplex was perfect, 2 units, each with 2 bedrooms, in a neighborhood that was quietly appreciating. The current owner was an elderly woman moving to assisted living, and she'd kept the property in excellent condition. The numbers worked beautifully. My mortgage payment would be $1,600 a month, and the rental unit would bring in $1,300, meaning I'd live there for just $300 a month. I didn't tell anyone in my family what I was doing, not until the day I got my keys. That evening, I posted photos on Facebook. The exterior of the duplex, the bright kitchen, the backyard. The caption read, "Excited to announce I'm officially a homeowner and landlord, building wealth through real estate. Hard work and patience really do pay off." My phone started buzzing within minutes. Friends congratulated me. Coworkers commented with heart emojis. And then, 20 minutes after I posted, I saw Vanessa's comment. "Wow, that's the duplex I shared last week. What a coincidence. Not congratulations, not happiness for my success, just a pointed observation that I'd bought the property she'd been dreaming about." I didn't respond to her comment, but I watched as others did. People who didn't know our history, telling Vanessa that she must have inspired me, that great minds think alike, that maybe we could be neighbors someday. My mother called an hour later. "Diana, did you buy that duplex to hurt your sister?" "I bought it because it's a solid investment," I replied calmly. The fact that Vanessa posted about it is irrelevant to my decision. She's devastated. She and Kyle have been saving every penny, trying to get enough together for a down payment on a place just like that, and now you've swooped in and bought it with your savings. The savings she told me were stupid to have, the savings I built by making choices she mocked. This feels vindictive. This is business, Mom. I saw an opportunity and I took it. That's how wealth building works. I paused. Maybe if Vanessa had spent the last 10 years building savings instead of building debt, she'd be in a position to buy property too. I can't believe how cruel you've become. "I haven't become anything," I said. "I've always been this person. I've always been practical and goal-oriented and financially responsible. The only thing that's changed is that I'm no longer pretending it doesn't hurt when Vanessa treats me like trash for it." Mom hung up on me. That had never happened before. 2 days later, I was at the duplex directing the delivery of new furniture when Vanessa's car pulled up. Not the BMW, obviously. She and Kyle were now sharing his 8-year-old Toyota Camry, which meant she must have really wanted to see me to borrow it during his workday. She got out slowly, looking at the duplex with an expression I couldn't quite read. "So, this is it. This is it," I agreed, staying on the porch. "Can I see inside?" I considered saying no, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see what she'd say. The tour was silent. Vanessa walked through the main unit, the one I'd be living in, touching the new countertops, examining the updated fixtures, looking out the windows at the backyard. She didn't say a single word until we reached the master bedroom. "I had a plan for this place," she said quietly. "I'd been researching the neighborhood for months. I knew the property value would increase. I knew the rental income would be good. I'd calculated everything." She turned to face me. "I just couldn't execute it because I didn't have the money." "I know. You bought this to prove a point." "I bought this because it's a smart investment. Your interest in it was irrelevant." "Liar." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "You bought it because I wanted it. Because you wanted to show me what happens when you save money instead of spending it. This is revenge, if you want to see it that way." Vanessa's laugh was bitter. "Do you feel better now? Does this make up for all the times I said something mean about your car or your apartment?" "No," I said honestly. "Those things hurt, and buying a duplex doesn't erase that hurt. But what this does do is prove that I was right and you were wrong. My choices were smart. Your choices were foolish. And now you get to watch me build wealth while you dig yourself out of debt." "You've changed," Vanessa said. "You used to be kind." "I am being kind," I replied. "I'm not charging you rent to live in my property. I'm not sending you bills. I'm not demanding anything from you. I'm simply living my life and making smart financial choices. The fact that watching that makes you uncomfortable is not my problem. Kyle thinks we should stop talking to you. Kyle is probably right. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but they looked more like angry tears than sad ones. I'm your sister. You're the person who spent 10 years making me feel worthless because I drove an old car and lived in a small apartment. You're the person who told Mom I'd never amount to anything. You're the person who left me off your wedding party because I wasn't pretty enough for your photos. I kept my voice steady. Being related to me by blood doesn't erase any of that. I was wrong, Vanessa said, the words coming out choked. I was wrong about all of it. Is that what you want to hear? You were right. I was wrong. You win. This isn't about winning. Then what is it about? I thought about that for a moment. Consequences, I finally said. You spent years believing that image and status were more important than financial stability. You mocked me for choosing differently. Now you're facing the consequences of your choices, and I'm enjoying the benefits of mine. That's all this is. Vanessa wiped her eyes. The worst part is that I can't even be mad at you. You're right. About everything. I made terrible choices, and now I'm paying for them. I maxed out credit cards for furniture nobody needed. I leased a car I couldn't afford to impress people who didn't care. I lied to my husband about money because I was ashamed. She looked around the master bedroom. And I missed the chance to buy this place because I had no savings and no credibility with lenders. What are you and Kyle going to do? Exactly what we have to do. Pay off the debt. Build savings. Learn to live within our means. Maybe in 5 years, we'll be ready to buy something. She met my eyes. Will you still be rubbing my face in it then? I'm not rubbing your face in anything now. I'm living my life. In the duplex I wanted. In a duplex you couldn't buy. I corrected. If I hadn't purchased it, someone else would have. The only difference is that you'd be able to pretend that someone else got lucky, when the reality is that they, like me, made better financial choices than you did. Vanessa left without another word. I watched her Toyota Camry pull away from my duplex, my investment property, my proof that every choice I'd made for the last 10 years had been exactly right. That night, I sat on the back deck of my new home, calculating rental rates for the second unit. The market could support $1,400 a month easily. With my mortgage at $1,600, I'd be living essentially for free while building equity in an appreciating asset. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. The first communication I'd had from him since this whole situation began. Your mother is upset. I'm staying neutral. But between you and me, I'm proud of you. You made smart choices, and you're reaping the rewards. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for that, Dad. I read the text 3 times, feeling something warm spread through my chest. My father understood. The man who'd taught me to save, to plan, to build for the future. He understood what I'd done and why. I texted back, thanks, Dad. That means everything. The sun was setting over my neighborhood, my investment property, my future. And for the first time in weeks, I felt completely at peace. 3 months after I moved into the duplex, I found the perfect tenant for the second unit. A young couple, both teachers with excellent credit and stable jobs. They fell in love with the place immediately and signed a 15-month lease at $1,400 per month. I posted a cheerful photo on social media of me handing them the keys. Officially a landlord. So grateful to have wonderful tenants who will help me build equity while I live essentially rent-free. Real estate investing is incredible. Vanessa didn't comment. She didn't like the post, but I knew she saw it because my mother called within the hour. Do you have to flaunt this? Mom asked. Flaunt what? My successful investment? You know what you're doing, Diana. You're making your sister feel terrible. I'm sharing my life on my own social media, I replied. Vanessa doesn't have to follow me or look at my posts. That's her choice. Mom sighed heavily. She and Kyle are really struggling, you know. The debt consolidation is helping, but they're on such a tight budget. And seeing you buy a property, rent it out, live basically for free while building wealth, it's hard for her. Life is hard when you make bad financial choices. That's the lesson here. When did you become so cold? I'm not cold, Mom. I'm realistic. Vanessa made her bed. Now she gets to lie in it. The truth was, I'd been keeping tabs on Vanessa's situation through various family members. She and Kyle had indeed enrolled in debt consolidation, combining their credit card balances into a single payment plan that would take 4 years to complete. They'd both taken on second jobs, Kyle doing consulting work on weekends, Vanessa doing freelance marketing from home in the evenings. Their combined income had actually increased, but every extra dollar went to debt repayment. They'd cut their lifestyle down to basics. No restaurants, no shopping, no vacations. The apartment they'd moved to was functional, but in a rough neighborhood. They'd sold most of their expensive furniture to pay down debt faster. In other words, they were living exactly the life I'd been living for the past decade, while Vanessa had mocked me for it. The real satisfaction came 4 months after I bought the duplex. I was at a family barbecue at my parents' house, the first one I'd attended since the car crash. Vanessa and Kyle were there too. The atmosphere tense and awkward. I was helping my father at the grill when I overheard Vanessa talking to our cousin Jennifer. I just don't understand how Diana afforded that duplex, Vanessa was saying, her voice carrying across the patio. She's a dental hygienist. She can't make that much more than Kyle and I do combined. She saves, Jennifer replied simply. My mom told me Diana's been saving aggressively since college. But how? I mean, she must make what, $50,000 a year? Where does the money come from? I turned around, unable to resist. $52,000, I said, and the money comes from not spending it on things I don't need. Vanessa's face flushed. I wasn't. Yes, you were. I walked over to where they stood. You were trying to figure out how someone who makes less money than you has more wealth. Want me to break it down for you? Diana, Kyle said quietly, appearing at Vanessa's side. Maybe not here. Why not here? She asked the question in front of everyone. I looked at Vanessa directly. You wanted to know where the money came from. It came from driving a car that cost me $300 a month instead of $800. That's $6,000 a year. It came from living in an apartment that cost me $900 a month instead of your $2,400. That's $18,000 a year. It came from packing my lunch instead of buying it. Shopping sales instead of paying full price. Drinking $2 wine instead of $18 wine. We get it, Vanessa said tightly. Do you? Because for 10 years, you've acted like my lifestyle was something to be ashamed of. But those choices, the ones you mocked, they added up to over $100,000 in savings, which is how I bought a property you couldn't afford despite making more money than me. The patio had gone quiet. Family members were pretending not to listen, while clearly hanging on every word. My down payment was 25%, I continued. That's how I got a great interest rate. My mortgage is less than most people's rent. My tenant pays $1,300 of my $1,600 mortgage. I live in a 2-bedroom home in an appreciating neighborhood for $300 a month, while building equity every single month. I paused. That's the power of making smart financial choices instead of trying to impress people who don't care. Kyle put his hand on Vanessa's arm. Let's go inside. No, Vanessa said, her voice shaking. She's right. She's right about all of it. I spent money I didn't have on things I didn't need to impress people who didn't matter. I mocked her for being smart when I was being stupid. And now I get to spend the next 4 years paying for it while she builds wealth. Tears started streaming down her face. Is this what you wanted, Diana? To publicly humiliate me the way I humiliated you? I didn't humiliate you, I said calmly. I answered your question about where my money came from. You humiliated yourself by spending a decade making terrible choices. Vanessa turned and walked into the house. Kyle followed her. The patio remained silent for a long moment before conversation slowly resumed. People carefully avoiding looking at me. My father appeared at my elbow. That was harsh, he said quietly. It was honest. Sometimes those are the same thing. He flipped a burger. Your sister is dealing with a lot right now. By dealing with, you mean facing consequences? He didn't answer that directly. You've made your point, Diana. You've proven you were right. Maybe it's time to ease up a little. When did she ease up on me? When did she stop making me feel small for my choices? When you stopped giving her the opportunity. You won. She knows it. Everyone knows it. He met my eyes. The question is, what are you going to do with that win? I thought about that for the rest of the barbecue. My father's words stayed with me as I drove home to my duplex. As I checked on my tenant's satisfaction with the property, as I reviewed my growing savings account that evening. What was I going to do with this win? The answer came to me 2 weeks later. Vanessa posted something on Facebook, a long, vulnerable post about financial mistakes and recovery. She talked about the debt she and Kyle were paying off, the lifestyle changes they'd made, the lessons they were learning. She didn't mention me by name, but she alluded to family members who tried to warn me and who I dismissed. The post got hundreds of comments, support, shared stories, encouragement. And at the bottom, after reading all of it, I typed my own comment. Proud of you for facing this and doing the hard work to recover. It takes courage to admit mistakes and change course. 3 words appeared below my comment almost immediately. Thank you, Diana. But that was it. I'd shown her I could be gracious in victory. But I wasn't going to pretend the last 10 years hadn't happened. I wasn't going to offer her money or help beyond basic familial civility. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. And now we both lived with the results. That night, my tenant texted me a question about the water heater. I answered it promptly, professionally, like the competent landlord I'd become. Then I opened my banking app and looked at my accounts. The duplex had cost me $85,000 for the down payment and closing costs. My savings account now held $42,000. My retirement account continued growing with my monthly contributions. My tenant's rent covered most of my housing cost while the property appreciated. In 10 years, this duplex would likely be worth double what I'd paid for it. My mortgage would be half paid off. I'd have built substantial wealth through a single smart investment while continuing to save and invest in other ways, and Vanessa would still be rebuilding from the financial hole she'd dug herself into. The satisfaction I felt wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about vindication. Every choice I'd made had been right. Every sacrifice had been worth it. Every time Vanessa had mocked my old car or small apartment, she'd been wrong. I'd won. Not by being cruel, but by being smart. And that victory was sweeter than any revenge could ever be. 2 years later, I was renovating the kitchen in my duplex unit when Vanessa's car pulled into my driveway. The same shared Toyota Camry, now approaching 10 years old but still running. She got out slowly, hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she'd be welcome. I put down my paint roller and met her at the door. "Nice upgrades," she said, looking past me at the half-painted cabinets. "Increasing the property value?" "Always." I didn't invite her in, but I didn't close the door either. "I wanted to tell you something," Vanessa said. "Kyle and I made our final debt payment last week. 4 years of consolidation, done. We're completely debt-free. Congratulations, that's a major accomplishment. We've been saving aggressively since then. We've got about 30,000 now." She met my eyes. "We're talking to lenders about buying a small starter home. Nothing fancy. A 2-bedroom condo in a decent neighborhood. Something we can actually afford." "That's smart. I learned from the best." There was no sarcasm in her voice. "Diana, I was wrong about everything. The way I treated you, the choices I made, all of it. I'm not asking for forgiveness or for us to be close again. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what you were trying to show me." I leaned against the doorframe. "What was I trying to show you?" "That wealth isn't about looking rich. It's about making choices that build actual financial security. That saving matters more than spending. That image is worthless if there's nothing behind it." She paused. "You tried to tell me that for years, and I mocked you for it. Then you bought this duplex, and it finally clicked. You weren't just talking about money. You were talking about building a real life. What prompted this visit?" "Kyle got offered a job in Seattle. Great opportunity, big raise. We're moving in 2 months." She looked at the duplex. "I wanted to say goodbye, and to say I'm sorry, properly, before we go." "Accepted," I said simply. Vanessa blinked. "Just like that? You did the work. You paid off your debt. You changed your habits. You learned the lesson." I shrugged. "I'm not going to keep punishing you for mistakes you've already paid for." "Are we? Can we be sisters again?" I thought about that. We can be cordial, friendly, even. But the relationship we had before, where you felt entitled to my money and my help, that's gone. You burned that." "Fair enough." Vanessa held out her hand. "Friendly works." I shook it. "Good luck in Seattle, and congratulations on the debt freedom. That really is an achievement." After she left, I went back to painting my kitchen. The duplex had appreciated by 30% in 2 years. My tenant had just renewed for another year. My savings account was back up to $75,000. My retirement accounts were growing steadily. I'd recently started looking at second investment properties, smaller condos that I could rent out completely, building my real estate portfolio while my full-time job provided stable income. The life Vanessa had mocked as small and pathetic had become the foundation of genuine wealth. My old car still ran perfectly. My tiny apartment had become a valuable asset. My boring, practical choices had paid off in ways she was only beginning to understand. A few months after Vanessa moved to Seattle, I attended a financial independence meetup in Portland, a room full of people who'd made similar choices to mine, driving older cars, living below their means, investing aggressively. We shared strategies and success stories, celebrated each other's wins. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood that real wealth is built in the quiet, unsexy moments of saying no to things you can't afford, of choosing long-term security over short-term status. These were my people. This was my community. And I'd found it by staying true to my values even when they were mocked. Even when my own sister made me feel worthless for having them. On the drive home in my now 13-year-old Honda Civic, with 200,000 miles on the odometer but still running strong, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the years of mockery and condescension, the moment in the body shop parking lot when I'd shown Vanessa my savings account, the duplex purchase that had proven my point more effectively than words ever could. I'd never set out to teach my sister a lesson. I just lived my life according to principles I believed in. But in doing so, I demonstrated something important, that the people who laugh at your choices are often the ones who will need your help later, and you are under no obligation to provide it. Vanessa had learned that lesson the hard way. She'd spent 4 years digging herself out of debt while watching me build wealth. She'd lost her BMW, her luxury apartment, and her illusions about what real financial success looked like. And in the end, she'd thanked me for it. That was its own kind of victory. 6 months later, I closed on my second investment property, a small condo near the university that I rented to graduate students. The rental income covered the mortgage with room to spare. My real estate portfolio was growing. I posted about it on social media, not to hurt anyone, but because I was genuinely proud. Vanessa liked the post from Seattle and commented, "Killing it. So proud of you." 3 words that would have meant everything to me 10 years ago. Now they were just words, because I'd learned something Vanessa never understood until it was too late. You don't need anyone's approval to build a good life. You just need discipline, patience, and the courage to ignore people who mock your choices. My old piece of junk carried me home from the closing, its engine humming reliably. Its presence in my garage a daily reminder that the best investments aren't always the flashiest ones. Sometimes the best investment is simply choosing not to spend money you don't need to spend. And that choice, repeated thousands of times over years, had bought me freedom, security, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd been right all along. Vanessa had crashed her $55 car and learned an 8 $1,000 lesson. But that lesson had really cost her much more. 4 years of her life, her marriage's trust, and the relationship with her sister. I'd spent those same 4 years building wealth, expanding my portfolio, and living proof that the boring, practical choices everyone mocks are actually the smart ones. In the end, we both got exactly what our choices deserved. And I couldn't help but smile every time I started my reliable old Honda, knowing that it had carried me to a destination my sister was only beginning to understand was worth reaching.